And here we have the last in the trio, the ESCI Panzer 5 Panther Ausführung A. So this is originally a 1974 molding, so it's a pretty old one. A lot of ESCI's tools were reused by Italeri. I do not believe they've reissued the Panther in quite a while, but we'll have a little look and see how the other newer Panthers compare to this old one. So the instructions, they are pretty old, and they're sort of like a 3-page kind of booklet thing here. You've got the cover there with a few little details about the tank and some of its dimensions and all of that. Then if you open it up on the first page here, you've got a little sprue map. So there are 2 sprues, so it's a little bit more like the Zvezda kit. However, it's not as simplified. And then you've got a few nice little reference pictures of the real tanks, which is quite a nice little touch. Then you've got the actual assembly instructions. So as you can see, they're a little bit crowded and it's a little bit tricky to see what's going on. For the most part, they try to kind of guide you with the black arrows, so you make sure you put everything in the right spot. Usually there's some guide pins, but there are sometimes like parts where with the ESCI and the Italeri kits where there's no guide pins, so it's a little bit tricky to get the alignment correct. But otherwise, a little bit more complex in that you have to build up the hull, but that's probably because they had to mold it that way, so you got the detail on the hull sides. However, unlike the other kits, you don't have to put the individual links or the individual arms for the road wheels there, so a little bit easier, but you've still got to put the individual road wheels together and make sure they're interlocked and all of that. Your machine gun, which is actually mounted on sort of a pindle, so you can actually rotate it, which is a pretty nice touch, a little bit more of a posable feature there. You've still got a lot of your accessories included, like all the tools and all of that. You've got your travel lock there, some tow rope. You have to do a few other fiddly things, like for the tow ropes, if you want to bend them, they suggest that you use I believe that looks like a cigarette, but I assume they mean basically just any sort of heat to make them bend. And you've got rubber band tracks, which I will talk about in a moment. Sprocket wheel. Interestingly, the idler has teeth, which I believe is just to make it mesh with the rubber road wheels. However, in real life, the Panther did not obviously have that. Then you've got your turret assemblies, pretty similar to the other tanks, except you've got a rear piece there. Again, it's pretty much the same with the mantlet and all of that for the elevation system. You actually got a machine gun included for the roof, which some German tanks would have for aircraft defense and I suppose infantry if they were desperate. Interestingly, you've actually got your barrels molded, or the whole gun assembly molded as 2 separate pieces, and that's obviously so they could get the muzzle detail in there, which we'll have a little look at in a moment. Separate hatches and a separate slot there for the visor for the driver's viewport there. Few extra little tools on the other side there. And you've actually got a little commander figure, which is a really nice touch. That's something that a lot of older kits would have. Nowadays, if you want to get a commander for your tank, you kind of got to buy them separately. But back then, in pretty much every ESCI kit, you'll get a nice little crew complement. Then your painting guide. It doesn't really tell you what's going on here. It's just a picture. Not very helpful. So I imagine in the earlier days of modelling, when you didn't have the internet, figuring out what scheme to do, which one was correct, would have been a real pain for this kit, because you would have had to find books and that sort of thing to get any reference material on which tank was which. Whereas nowadays, you could just basically take the decal sheet and Google, say, Panther 132 and figure out what the markings were, and assuming these are accurate, you can then use them. So, yeah, decals are a little bit old, obviously, in this kit. Since I've got them out, we might as well have a little look at them. Generally, the ESCI decals are pretty good. However, obviously, age has... it's been okay. Given that this could be as old as 50 years, that's not too bad. There's a little bit of yellowing on the clear sections, but that might even come out with a bit of water. So, yeah, decals aren't too bad. You've got a pretty wide range to choose from. So now we'll have a look at parts. And as you can see, the details are still really not that bad, even though this kit is 50 years old. There's a few things that are a little bit simplified, like some of the rivets aren't included on some of the access panels. The welding details are raised rather than sunken, which still looks pretty good. Especially on the ones on the front there, they honestly still look really good. The rivets are raised on the rear deck there for the access hatches for the engine, but still, honestly, for the age of this kit, it's not too bad. And in fact, this kit actually has one thing the others didn't, and that is a sort of armored texture on the sides of the hull and pretty much every armored surface, which personally I think is a really nice touch. It's not as strong on the front there, but it's so it's a little bit more dominant on the sides there. But you can see all the welding marks, and they're all in the right spot. They all look really quite nice. Finer details, some of the patterns here might be a little bit more exaggerated compared to the other kits, especially on these tow ropes, but still not too bad. There's a little bit of imperfections and a little bit of flash. It's a bit hard to see on some of these parts, but you can kind of see those extra little imperfections there, so it's not as precisely molded, but it's still not too bad. Machine gun details maybe a little bit cartoony, I suppose. It would be a little bit smaller in real life with the barrel there, but otherwise it doesn't look too bad at all. It's nice though that they still got some of the details in. And here's your cannon barrels. So as you can see, they've molded them as two pieces that you stick together like an aircraft fuselage. So that's pretty cool that you got that in the 1970s. Again, details are still really not too bad at all, despite the age of this kit. Hatches are a little bit more simplified than the ones we saw, and they've got a little point there so that you can put them in place. Mantlet there. And as you can see, they've again done the armoured texture. It's not perfect, there's a few really odd scratches there and a few little sunken marks, but really not too bad for the age of this kit again. Here's the cupola there, it's looking quite nice. It's the later dome version, which was a little bit more armoured. You've got your exhausts here. As you can see, they haven't, the moulds are not precise enough to actually drill out the holes on the exhausts, but that's okay, it's still not too bad. Here you can see kind of the flashing that I'm talking about, especially in the upper parts of the frames here and around some of the really small finer parts. That just means you need to do a little bit of cleanup, but yeah, that's probably the main difference really between the older kits and the newer ones. They're a little bit more precise. And here we have the sides of the holes there. Still really nice details. There's a few, as you can see, those little circles there are the injector pin marks. They're in a little bit of an inconvenient spot. It would have been better if they were on the back of this part, but obviously, for whatever reason, they've put it on the front there. So, given that the Panther is quite, the sides are pretty high, so you would probably be able to see that, and the track won't cover it, then you might want to use a bit of filler. But that's a little bit inconvenient, but still not too bad. So yeah, that's not a bad looking sprue there. We've got another one here with all of the road wheels. As you can see, details are pretty similar. They're just not as sharp and clear. And there's a few little areas where the rivets aren't as well done. And there's a few like little imperfections, like you can see here, where the rubber's kind of, there's a bit of flashing on it and it kind of obscures a little bit of the detail. But that can be cleaned up. Sprockets are looking really quite nice there, nice and solid, and they should fit together nicely. Again, on the turret here, you've got a nice kind of armoured texture there that's a little bit imperfect, and a few nice little weld lines, especially on the roof there. And details are not that bad. Like, you've still got your air filter there, or the gas extractor, you've got your little vision blocks there on the roof there, so not looking too bad at all. Stowage boxes, they've got moulded details, so they're not too bad at all. Here's the rear plate, which is a little bit smooth. It doesn't have that same kind of armoured texture. The same for the rear of the turret there, with the escape hatch separate. But still decent details on the back there. A little bit less than the rest of the tank. And yeah, it looks like some of the holes aren't quite fully drilled out, but that's easy enough to fix. At least there's still a marking there, so you can drill them out yourself. Bottom of the hull, no details really. It's sort of just a basic piece with a few little guide pins to line up the rest of the hull, but hey, that's alright. That's the bottom of the tank, so unless you're doing something specific, you probably don't need that detail. A few extra little bits of spare track that you might be able to put somewhere in your tank. And here's quite nice, the little commander figure there. So he doesn't look too bad at all. There's a few little imperfections, like you've got a little circle there, you've got a pretty nasty seam line running down there, but otherwise with a little bit of cleanup you can get a nice little commander figure, and it's pretty awesome that you get him in this kit. And now the point of, I suppose, a little bit of a disappointing point, but still to be expected given how old this kit is, the rubber band kind of plasticky tracks. Details aren't too bad on it. You've still got some decent ones. You've still got your guide teeth there on the other side, but they're not as detailed as these Avesta or the Vespid kit's plastic tracks. And they're also not as malleable. Like they're bendy and they're foldy, but they won't hold shape. They want to go flat basically, or however they're kept for a long time. Like if you put weight on them and keep them like that, then they won't want to reform. And the trouble I find with them really is that they put a lot of tension on the actual running gear system, just like on a real tank. However, unlike on a real tank, they're fragile bits of plastic for the road wheels, and yeah, sometimes you can have instances like I'll take this Hasegawa Sherman here. You can see that the idler over time has actually been forced inwards because of the tension that the tracks are putting on them. And there's also a pretty good chance that you will damage the road wheels. As you can see, they've come loose. In fact, this one's not even attached anymore because it's just put too much pressure on it and broken it off. So that's the trouble with rubber band tracks. They're also really tricky to actually work with. I like to just staple them together. What other people like to do is to actually heat weld them together, which is kind of the idea behind them. So you'd put them like that and then just get like something really hot and basically melt them together so that they form one piece. But that's pretty tricky to do. You're pretty likely to burn yourself if you're not careful, and sometimes you can also damage the tracks even more, and you'll melt some of the detail on them as well. Whereas I find if you get a stapler, it's a pretty solid joint, and you're not so likely to have it come apart or do as much damage. So yeah, rubber track's not ideal, but given that this kit's from the 1970s, that was pretty standard back then. And that's kind of one of the nice things about newer kits is that you've got a few more options. A lot of kits will actually come with a set of rubber tracks, but also include plastic ones. So depending on which way you want to go, then you can switch around. So it's nice that we've moved on a little bit from these, but hey, still not too bad if I'm being honest. You'll still get a nice decent kit out of these tracks. So there we have it. That's the three Panther kits I wanted to take a little look at. There's obviously a few more on the market, like you've got the Hasegawa Panther, Revell do a couple of little nice Panthers, and Dragon also do a nice detailed set in 72nd scale. And you'll find plenty of others. It's a very popular tank, and a lot of people want to have one in their collection for pretty obvious reasons. These three kind of reflect some different price points, levels of difficulty, and also in the case of the ESCI Panther kind of demonstrate how a lot of things are similar with the newer kits that have come out, but there's also a pretty obvious increase in the level of detail and quality on these kits, and obviously rubber band tracks are sort of becoming a bit of a thing of the past. You can see there's none included in this kit, and there's a similar kind of system that's supposed to be relatively easy to use that's still a bit tricky and puts a lot of tension on the road wheels. But hey, at least it's a little bit more detail, and the plastic is, to be fair, a lot more malleable than the rubber in the older kits. And also kind of different price ranges. Like I said, you can expect about $20 for the Zvezda Panther. With the Vespid, you can expect around about $35. With the ESCI kit, obviously it's not in production anymore, so you're more likely to get a higher price on them, but you can kind of get them from anything from 20 if you're lucky to up to 40 or so on eBay or vintage sites. In the future, we'll have a little build of these kits. Hopefully it won't be too long before that video comes out. I'll be starting work on them pretty soon, or at least that's the plan. I'll leave links in the description to Tectonic Hobbies where you can get some of these newer kits, and also I'll leave a little link to my eBay site where I'm selling vintage kits. I don't have the ESCI Panther, like I said, up on it, but you never know, one day I might come across another one that I wish to sell. Thank you very much for being patient and staying to the end. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to leave a like and also subscribe to my YouTube channel. And big shout out, as always, to my wonderful patrons for helping me fund my videos. I really appreciate all the support everyone's been giving, especially this year. It's been wonderful to see the channel grow so much. And I've got plenty more projects planned. In fact, I'll be doing a build video on all three of these Panthers, or at least that's the plan at this stage. And they're going to be used in an animation that I've got planned that should be coming out hopefully pretty soon after this video. So stay tuned for that, and until the next video, model on!